As they went on their way, he came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to everything that he said. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks, and she came to Jesus and she said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me." And Jesus said, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things, but only one thing is needed. Your sister has chosen the better part, and it will not be taken from her." A certain man, Lazarus of Bethany, was ill. Bethany was the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Mary was the one who anointed Jesus with perfume and wiped it with her hair. It was her brother who was ill. So the two sisters sent a message to Jesus saying, "Lord, the one who you love is ill." But when Jesus heard it, he said, "This illness doesn't lead to death. Rather, it's for God's glory, so the Son of God may be glorified." And accordingly, although he loved Martha and her sister, and having heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. After this, he said to the disciples, "Let's go to Judea again." The disciples said, "Lord, the people there were just now wanting to stone you, and you want to go back?" Jesus said, "Are there not 12 hours of daylight? The people who walk during the day don't stumble because they see the light of this world. But those who walk at night, they do stumble because there is no light in them." And he said to them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep. I'm going to go waken him." The disciples said, well, if he's fallen asleep, then he's all right then. Jesus was speaking about his death, but they thought he was merely referring to sleep. So he spoke more plainly to them. He said, "Lazarus is dead. For your sake, I'm glad that I wasn't there, so that you may believe. Now, let's go to him." So Thomas, who's called the twin, he said, "Let's also go with him, so we may die with him." When Jesus arrived there, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now, Bethany was close to Jerusalem, some 2 miles. So many of the Jews had come up to console Martha and her sister about their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and she met him, and Mary stayed back home. Martha came to Jesus and she said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that God will give you whatever you ask him." Jesus said, "Your brother will rise again." She said, "I know he'll rise again in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. Everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" Martha said, "I do believe this. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world." And after she said this, Martha went back home, and she called her sister Mary, and she spoke to her privately. She said, "The teacher is here, and he's calling for you." When Mary heard, she got up quickly and she went to him. Now, Jesus was not at the village yet. He was back where he met Martha. So when the Jews who were there at the house consoling her saw Mary get up, they followed her because they thought she was going to the tomb to weep. Mary came to the place where Jesus was, and when she saw him, she knelt down at his feet. And she said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and when he saw all the other Jews weeping, he was deeply disturbed in his spirit. He was greatly moved. He said, where have you laid him? He said, Lord, come and see. Then Jesus himself began to weep. And those who were there said, see how he loved him? And some others said, couldn't the one who opened the eyes of a blind man have kept this man from dying? Then Jesus came to the tomb. Now the tomb was a cave, and there was a stone lying against it. So he said, take away the stone. But Martha, the sister of the dead man, said, Lord, there's already a stench. He's been in there for 4 days. Jesus said, didn't I tell you that if you believe, that you will see the glory of God? And so they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked upward and he said, Lord, I thank you for having heard me. I always know that you hear me, but I say this for the benefit of the crowd so that they may know that you sent me. After he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out! And the dead man came out, his hands and his feet bound with strips of cloth, with his head wrapped in cloth. And Jesus said, unbind him and let him go. "6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to the home of Lazarus of Bethany. Lazarus, who he had raised from the dead. There they gave a supper for him. Martha served, and Lazarus was one who was at the table with them. And Mary brought a pound of costly perfume, pure nard, and she began to anoint his feet and to wipe them with her hair. The whole house was filled with the fragrance of that perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of the disciples, the one who was about to betray him, he said, couldn't that perfume have been sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor? He said this not because he cared about the poor. He was a thief. He used to keep the common purse and steal what was put in it. Jesus said, leave her alone. She's bought it so she could keep it for my burial. For you will always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me.